When I first started fighting, my fight IQ was very, very, very low. I literally knew nothing. I trained for 2 months from nothing, like skateboarding around the streets and then, okay, run and hit the bag for 2 months. And then I had my first pro fight. From there, I fought 9 times that same year. So if you're fighting 9 times, you're not accumulating a wealth of knowledge and technique and growth. You're learning on the job. You're learning how to deal with the fire from getting burned. And there's some good things in that. There's some really good things in that. But there's limits to how far you can get like that. And MMA as a sport, to just like learn by doing, come on, it's not badminton, right? Like, you get points by hurting the other person. Your opponent gets points by hurting you, by trying to knock you out, by damaging you. So if you're learning all the lessons by getting damaged, eventually you're gonna be, probably not eventually, pretty damn quick, you're gonna be too damaged to even continue fighting, or at least want to continue fighting, unless you're a little weird. Eventually, I figured out that just fighting wasn't enough. I needed more knowledge. I needed to figure out some of the moving parts. So I had to leave the town of Prince George, BC, and move down somewhere where they had elite coaching. Now, I came from an awesome gym, right? I came from an awesome coach. My MMA coach is still in my corner to this day. If I was to fight again, I might fight again. He would be in my corner still to this day. But technically, he didn't have all the answers that I needed. Like, we didn't really know how to wrestle. We didn't know how to deal with cages and walls and stop takedowns. We didn't know how to use our guard all that well, other than like triangle, armbar, maybe guillotine. Like, it was just a very rudimentary system that we were running. I didn't have the information. And this is like 2003, 2004. So there's no YouTube just full of knowledge. There's no like courses. There's no pro fight guides. There's no BJJ fanatics. There's nobody that's creating online course content that you can just go and see. So I had to actually travel. Before I actually made the move, we would travel. We would go to Vegas and we would spend all this money to be in Vegas and fly there, and then we're training there for like a week and come back and then just drill that for the next year. And then we'd go somewhere else, go to Vancouver for a couple weeks and train with Dennis Kang and get beat up and learn from him, and then go back home and drill that. And if we weren't drilling the stuff that we would learn on these training trips, we were just drilling stuff from the Gracie book. We also had Judo Jean LaBelle's book, and we had like a 10th Planet book. And that was our knowledge, right? Like, no boxing really, like slick boxing. It was just not good. Straight punching, cardio. Yeah, we were tough, but we're gonna get smashed anytime we get somebody that's even a little good, especially good on the ground. So eventually I figured this out because I got my face smashed. My face smashed in 5 places. I broke my orbital here, here, and I cracked it under my eye. In the very same fight, I also broke my nose in 2 places. Thank you, Mr. Jesse Bongsfeld. Need me in the face when I was shooting. We made a video on it, and you need to watch that. So I break my face in so many places, bunch of screws and plates go in, and I had to really make a choice. Like, do I really want to do this with my life? Can I handle walking away from this? I was young and I got in early. This was before The Ultimate Fighter, before most people even figured out that this MMA thing was an actual thing. It was actually no holds barred, NHB, but we call it MMA for the same thing. We didn't have the unified rules. It was all like old school, different generation. So I figure out a way. I move down to Vancouver. I find a good gym, and this gym has crazy coaches. So I've got awesome boxing coaches. I've got freestyle wrestling coaches. I've got Greco-Roman wrestling coaches. I've got Muay Thai coaches, kickboxing coaches. It's just like, I'm in heaven, and I'm just like, just absorbing all of this information like a sponge. I'm like 22, 23 years old, just just ready to intake all the info. And I had a bit of a terrible record by that time because I fought way too much when I didn't really know anything, and the record got a little dingy. So I had to work out of the hole. So I was just training my butt off and fighting as often as I can. Now that got me a whole lot better. That really helped a ton, because if you don't have the right information, if you don't have the right technical instruction and knowledge and technique, then you're not gonna be very good. You're not gonna be able to beat people that have that. Right? Like if back when I was in Prince George, if I got stuck on the bottom of a mount and I couldn't bridge and roll the guy off, right, flip him over, then I was dead, right? I'd just like end up giving my back and get choked out. Like I had nothing. I didn't know how to do a knee to elbow escape. If you don't know how to do a knee to elbow escape, make sure you get our MMA basics course, because we go over all of that great stuff for your beginner life. Check it out. Now, even though I had this great understanding of technique, I wasn't always able to use it, because your mind runs your body. And I didn't really understand the mental side of fighting. I didn't understand what my brain was supposed to be thinking in each moment while I was fighting. That is a really big problem. And luckily, I had a fantastic coach, my freestyle wrestling coach, Nicholas Uguala. Thank you, Nick. I still remember all of these lessons and use them to this day. Was able to tell me a couple really simple things that helped me so greatly to just be able to show up with 100% of myself and use everything that I had acquired in the moment, instead of being in my head thinking about like, oh, what happens if I lose this fight? And oh, there's so much riding on it. And oh no, this guy's too good. No, I was able to shut all that out. And then I was able to actually use this technique. And boom, I went on a tear, right? So now I'm at like the top of the country. I'm like top 3, top 4 in the country, maybe even top 2. And a lot of people are thinking I'm gonna be the next guy to go in. Now, unfortunately, the gym and training situation that I had created in Vancouver was no longer working out. The gym had closed, everybody was dispersing, all my training partners were spread out and retiring, and it was just terrible. So I had to figure out another place to go. And I found TriStar Gym. I went to TriStar, I trained under Faraz Zahabi, I trained with Georges St-Pierre, and in the heyday of Georges St-Pierre's career, so he's champion, and there's like 50 people on the mats for sparring. It was nuts. And there I learned a ton. Right away I started learning. Faraz was giving me these awesome technical systems that I was able to just go and use right away. The first 2 weeks I was there, I learned this system. He studied my opponent, he broke it down, and he showed me all these techniques that he thought it would work. And I went into the fight and I used everything and just slaughtered this guy in like 3 minutes. Like kicked him in the head, punched him in the face, tried to take me down. I took his back, choked him out in 3 minutes. It was savage. So now everybody's really talking, right? I'm hot in the streets. I'm like that next like up and coming guy. I'm like, I don't know, 28 or 29 or something. So it's just perfect time to go in. I book a fight with, who was it? What's the guy's name? The Irish hand grenade, Marcus Davis, right? He's coming out of the UFC. He was a knockout artist in the UFC. I think he was a southpaw. And I was like my first day of camp for this. 8 weeks out, I'm sparring, I'm feeling fantastic. Like 8 weeks out, I'm already on fire, and it's just like, oh man, I'm just gonna dust this guy and I'm gonna get in. Like I'm next, right? I'm next. And then I spar this one guy, Moise Rimbon, man, and man, we're just going, we're giving it, man. I'm just like believing in all my stuff, feeling so fluid, just feeling so good. And some of the stuff I was doing was a little bit risky, but I just felt great. Right? And right before the end of the round, I get hit with this nasty overhand right, and I just feel like this like jolt go through my face, you know, and I had felt that jolt before, right? Because I broke this before, and when you break your face, when you break your orbitals, a lot of times it'll pinch a nerve in your face, right? And it will dead the tissue so you can't really feel it anymore. Bzz, 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 and like numbness, and Yeah, so I broke my other orbital, a blowout fracture, and that took years to recover from. Took me years to recover, but I knew that if I had left Montreal, I knew if I went back home, I knew if I went back and recovered that I probably would stop. I probably would never make it back to Montreal, and that might be the end of my career, and I knew that couldn't happen. So I figured out a way to stay broke, and just be in the gym doing whatever I could to help my friends that were fighting and just learn and suck up knowledge from everywhere. And then 2 years later, after trying to fight everybody in the country, nobody wanting to fight me, finally recovered, but nobody wanting to fight. Finally, I get into the Ultimate Fighter. And I'm like, yes, finally, I'm in. Everything is gonna be okay now. I'm gonna dust all these guys because I'm way better than them and make it all the way, win the show, get into the UFC, get a contract, and just rise through the ranks, become the champion. First fight in the Ultimate Fighter, dust him. Again, just like flawless victory. Kneed him in the face, cut him, heel hooked him, popped his knee, got back up, took his back, choked him out. 3 minutes. And then the second fight. Now, the second fight wasn't as good. There's some extenuating circumstances. Long story short, I busted my jaw in like 3 places. Thank you, Chad Laprise. Snapped my jaw in half with an overhand right. Now, with the method that I was employing in that fight, I really thought that I was doing everything right. Like I was trying to press forward and using all of these like dynamic kicks that I had recently learned from Taekwondo. I'm using my boxing, but it wasn't something that he was unfamiliar with. There wasn't anything that I was doing that he didn't really understand. And also when I was trying to bring him down to the ground, because I was a way better jiu-jitsu fighter than he wasn't the best grappler. He was a great striker, but not the best grappler. I wasn't able to bring him down. Honestly, I didn't really understand why. So I take the loss in stride. I end up, because I'm a scrappy guy and the UFC liked how I fought, regardless of me losing in the semifinals, they give me a contract. So thank God I'm into the UFC. They give me a fight, my first fight, UFC 174 in Vancouver, BC, and I prepped for the fight. It was probably 6 months later. Now, in the Chad Laprise fight, in the semifinals of the Ultimate Fighter, not only did he break my jaw, but he knocked me out. Now, this is the first time that I've ever been knocked out in my career. Like, I had been dropped before in training and stuff, but I had never gone to sleep. And this one was like time travel sleep. Like, we're fighting, everything is fine, and then all of a sudden, I'm on my hands and knees on the ground, my jaw is broken, and I don't remember anything between fighting and being on the ground. So I obviously got knocked out. The follow-up fight, the first fight that I ever had in the UFC was booked 6 months after. I'm fighting a guy, tough Korean guy, Tai Hyun Bong. And he looked like he was tough, but not really skilled. And he was pretty skilled with a little bit of slipping and ripping, but it wasn't like he was an incredibly diverse athlete. He didn't have a long-range kick game. He didn't have great jiu-jitsu. He was more like, I got a right hand and a left hook, and I could move my head a little bit, and I got good distance and timing. He was very tough. I'll hand it to him. He was a very tough opponent. He took a lot of my shots. But my approach to this as well was still not elite. There's a big difference between fighting in a regional scene, fighting on like an international scene, and then fighting in the UFC. The UFC has all the best fighters. There's a couple guys that are outliers outside the UFC that could beat a bunch of the guys in the UFC, but overall, UFC has acquired all of the best fighters. So when you get in there, it's a little bit different. It's not the same as fighting outside the UFC. People are much better. People are much smarter. People understand things better than they do elsewhere. They have a high fight IQ. And in this fight against Mr. Tai Hyun Bong, my UFC debut, my approach was very linear. There was not a lot of use of angles. There was not a lot of ability to keep the fight on the ground. Even when I could take him down, I wasn't able to keep the fight on the ground and really dominate from the top. I was fighting like everybody else. I was doing everything that everybody else was doing. So of course it was easy for him to figure out what I was doing. And he's tough, he's powerful, find a shot, land a shot that again knocks me out, right? So I get knocked out on The Ultimate Fighter, break my jaw 3 places. 6 months later, UFC debut, knocked out again. And this was the gift. Those 2 knockouts gave me more knowledge than I had gotten anywhere else. Not by themselves, but they were the catalyst that sparked this incredible research journey. Because you can't level up just from pulling from other people, just from listening to your coach tell you things. You need to understand all the ways you could possibly fight. Your coach likely doesn't know all the ways you could possibly fight. So that's up to you to do the research. You have to watch everything. You have to think about everything. You have to be able to pick and choose this from this person, this from this person. Study Muay Thai, study elite Thai boxers, study boxers, elite ones, old ones, new ones, bare knuckle ones, all of them. Study jiu-jitsu fighters, study wrestlers, study judokas, study all of these arts and steal little bits from each person and test them. Things that interest you, things that you think would work for your body type, for your style, for your temperament. Take them and test them. And then once you test them, absorb them into your style. Once you know it works in the gym, start absorbing it and then put it into use in your fights. You have to accumulate all these things yourself. It all boils down to information. Now, it was through having these terrible things happen to me that I had enough initiative to go and do all of this deep thinking and deep looking and formulating a style that other people wouldn't understand, a style that was unconventional. I had an incredible knowledge of all of the conventional techniques. I had been learning from amazing coaches for a very long time. But in order to get to a different level, I had to figure out how to do things other people weren't doing, how to do things other people didn't understand. If you're gonna go out there and just try to throw a jab cross, the other person is going to have a pre-planned, pre-drilled, embodied understanding of how to deal with your jab cross. But if you're throwing your jab cross over here and then rolling under while switching stances, throwing an up jab and then a head kick that if it misses turns into a spinning hook and then a double leg, right? Like, they're not gonna understand how to deal with that. They're not gonna have a even if they understand, they're not gonna have a pre-planned defense for it. And this is where my fight IQ really started to surpass all of those around me. I began to just watch and watch and watch, and then shadow. I would spend hours shadow boxing. I would just put on music. Everybody else is sparring or rolling or doing whatever else. Put on music and go somewhere by myself in the karate room or in the cage or wherever's available and just shadow. Figure out all these different things and figure out how to put my own twist on it. Take all of these things that these other people are doing, combine them in different ways, and figure out my own way, my own additions that I could bolt on until my style went from this to this to this to this to this to this. I accumulated all of these different techniques. Now, technique is phenomenal. It's a phenomenal thing to have. You need all of these little tools. But the very biggest thing that affected my fight IQ was theory. Because theory tells us when to do what. If I know a billion techniques, but I don't know when to do which one, it's actually harder for me to fight because I'm making wrong choices. I'm just throwing things at the wall, hoping something is gonna stick. It's a dice roll, really, and everything really is a dice roll. Everything is a gamble. There's risk in everything, but it's like playing Russian roulette with a half-loaded gun. It's super dangerous. You need theories that govern what you're doing so that you can make fast decisions. And after I had accumulated all of this wealth of knowledge, all of these techniques, it's that thinking of how I can make those decisions faster. Here's a really quick one. So I call it the 70-30 rule. And this is extremely simple, but if you just follow this, it's essentially just a numbers game and you're gonna win more than you're gonna lose. You're putting the odds in your favor. The person has, generally speaking, a shape like this. Obviously they're standing up, but shape like this, right? They have a front hand that's fast. They have a back hand that's hard. Obviously there's hooks and stuff too that could be hard on either side, but for the most part, the back side is the power. So if you go away from the power side, that's gonna put you at an advantage. Now that's very rudimentary. Everybody knows that already, right? If you go away from the power, eventually I'm gonna figure out that you're always going that way and I'm gonna catch up with you. So how do you mitigate that? 70-30. Right? If you go away from the power side 70% of the time into the power side 30% of the time, then just by the numbers, you are going to be much harder for them to hit with their power, and you're going to be able to exploit different angles. When they start turning towards you this way, you go back over here and hit them this way. And then they turn over here and you're going back over there again. They got to go find you and they're landing shots from over on the weak side. Okay, now there's many different ways that we can figure out how to make these decisions, but these are the things that are going to affect you the most, affect your IQ the most. You need to learn technique from everywhere. You need to be able to understand all of these different methods of fighting. And then you need theories that will guide you, theories that will help you choose when to do what. Now, if you don't have access to elite level coaches, then you're lucky because we're in 2025 and everybody's making online courses now, including me. If you want to check out my online course, it's called the Pro Fight Guide. And we're building on it all the time. It's a work in progress. I think there's 7 courses in there now. Some are big, some are small. We've got the anti-wrestler course, we got the MMA basics guide, we're building the anti-striker course right now. So you have these methodologies for specific people that you're gonna fight. Everybody's gonna fight a striker. Everybody's gonna fight a wrestler. We'll probably do an anti-BJJ course, and there's a lot of different things we could do. Okay, and we're gonna be working on it forever. It's a great resource for people that want technique and want theory, because I don't just give you technique, I give you the theories that govern these things. I tell you, okay, if you want to make sure that you don't get taken down, you want to do this, right? You want to move like this. You want to be positioned here. You want to be using these kind of strikes. You want to avoid using these kind of strikes. You want to make these kind of shapes with your body. Stand like this, don't stand like this. Here's how you trick somebody. Oh, you got a wrestler. Okay, well, they're gonna be wanting to shoot. They're gonna be really sensitive to sprawl. So if you do this, then you're gonna be able to exploit those things because you can plan off of them. All of these things, all of my knowledge that I've acquired on this whole journey is what I'm putting into this Pro Fight Guide. And you don't have to just find it from me. Like Sanchai has a wicked course, right? My homie Ryan Hall is putting out crazy courses online, right? RyanHallOnline.com or something like that. Like there's so many people that they're creating these courses. Unfortunately, most of them are specialists. So you'll find like jujitsu courses, you'll find like Muay Thai and kickboxing courses, you'll find wrestling courses. You don't really find MMA courses. I'm not really sure why, but for some reason it seems anyway like I'm the only former UFC fighter that's actually giving back to the next generation by creating these course modules, right? So that's a resource that you can use. But even better, we have a free online community, right? If you're broke, join the free online community, Fighters Heaven. You get Ask Me Anything. Once a month, we do an Ask Me Anything, right? AMA, you can come on. We have a group call. Everybody talks to me, right? And you ask me different questions. You can put stuff in the Q&A feed, and I'll pull from the Q&A feed and answer all these questions. You can also send me footage. We've got people that are sending me their opponents' tapes, and I'll break down their opponents. Like, it's just a really valuable resource. And if you're in Vancouver or you want to come to Vancouver, it's actually Burnaby, it's a suburb of Vancouver. If you're in Burnaby or want to come to Burnaby, man, 7759 Edmund Street, right? Doors are open to anybody. If you want to be a fighter, you don't want to be a fighter, you just want to learn martial arts in a real cool environment from a dude that has been doing this at the highest level and just giving his entire life and body and brain and pocket money and everything to this entire sport forever. Right? Feel free to come down, man. I really appreciate the opportunity to teach new people and to impart this passion that I have into the next generation. So I hope you guys are able to take some of this information, take this story, and learn from it, and find a way to use some of these tactics to affect your fight IQ. Because the fight IQ is the #1 factor to determine who wins and loses. And if you look at MMA and you look at MMA records, it's very, very clear that 5% of that 5% of fighters are winning 95% of the fights. 5% of fighters win 95% of the fights. There are a lot of people out there that are 9-7, that are 11-14. There are a lot of people, okay? And then there are the Khabibs, right? 29-0. My record is jacked up because of the early days. But if you take my record from 2005 on, after I moved to Vancouver, to the end of my career, never know, I might come back. I was 16-5. So I learned a lot. And through learning, I was able to beat almost everyone I fought. Now, if you want to do that, learn the lessons from me, put it into practice, because it's not enough to know, you must apply. If you're still watching at the end of this video, I've been ranting for a while. So if you're still watching, you are a passionate martial artist. And I urge you to put all of this into practice. Thank you for watching. It's a pleasure to be teaching you. Peace, and I will see you in the next video.